Hey there guys, Datsa here, and today I'll be talking all about how to become just like your favorite artist. So, if you look at any painting, you'll come to find that they can be broken down into two very basic ideas: cause and effect. Why is that spaceship there, for instance? An effect? Because a decision was made to place it there, a cause, and you can really break this down and use this idea behind every last aspect of the painting. So using this mindset, I created a list of 3 very basic principles that you can really apply to any painting that you see that your favorite artist makes. And on its very bare bones level, if you can understand why your favorite artist does something, then you can make those same decisions yourself, or at least implement it in your train of thought. The first principle is contrasts, actually. So this could be contrasts in terms of colors, details, values. Like how do the colors shift? How do the values shift? Where are the general contrasts within the image? Were they the highest? Were they the lowest? Stuff like that. The second principle is decision making. So the less is more design thinking, in that what ways can you cut the amount of time you spend on something but still have an equal impact? And also cutting corners and adding corners. What parts of the painting do they kind of skimp on a little bit, and what parts of the painting do they emphasize a little bit? And finally, the last principle, which is selling points. So what is the big takeaway of each piece, and how does the piece really make you feel after you walk away from it? So because my production budget doubled from 1 cent to 2 cents, I can afford to show you this summary overlaid on the video for the first time ever. I know, Datsa doing editing, who would have guessed? To help solidify this example, I'm going to show you actually one of my favorite artists, which is Sparth, and we'll go ahead, go through the list, and see what we can find. Here's 3 paintings that I chose from Sparth, and let me go ahead and look at it in terms of the first principle, which is contrasts. If you look at the detail contrasts, you'll come to find that it follows a 70-30 rule, where 70% of the surfaces are relatively simple, while the other 30% are relatively complicated in terms of design. If you look at contrasts in terms of color, you'll come to find that there's a lot of small but very saturated colors placed on a lot of these objects. Like the third one, for instance, where there's some really saturated red on this really white spaceship. And finally, in terms of value contrasts, you'll come to find that a lot of this stuff is grouped, at least in terms of values. The darks are with the darks and the lights are with the lights. So if you were to zoom in far away from any of these images, you would still be able to tell what's going on. Another thing here is that in areas he wants you to focus on, there's a lot of contrast, or at least a lot of value shifts in what's going on. Take for instance the spaceships in 1 and 3. You'll come to find that their value that goes from dark to light is very, very harsh, and that's to really gain your attention and your eye. The reason why contrast is one of the principles is because using it allows you to lead the user's eye into certain areas. If you have areas of very high contrasting things, like all of a sudden dark to light, or high saturation to low saturation, people tend to pay attention to those areas first. Alright, now let's take a look at the second principle, which is decision making. So let's specifically look at getting more done with less. If you look at Sparth's work, you'll come to find that a lot of his strokes are laid on top of each other, but none of his strokes are completely covered up. And what that does is that allows all of the strokes he makes to have a final impact on the piece, and it also severely cuts down the amount of time he has to spend designing it. Because if you keep building strokes, you'll continue to build a more complicated design. He also cuts a lot of corners. A lot of his shapes are kind of simple at first glance, with a couple of additional things added to it to make it look more complicated. And another thing that shows up is that he has a general color for each of his objects, a general essence, if you will. And he doesn't really deviate from that too much, other than adding some strokes here and there that are different colors. So now let's take a look at the third principle, which is selling points. You'll come to find that there's always an object or two in Sparth's scenes which are oftentimes the most detailed, the biggest, and just really have the most contrast shifts, kind of like in the first principle. And those are the big selling points. Those are the big takeaways he wants you to have. If you look at it in terms of mood, how the piece makes you feel when you walk away from it, you'll come to find that a lot of his artworks are either kind of cooler or warmer to kind of give you a general mood or feeling. Now, I know what you're thinking. This probably doesn't apply to every painting. There's probably a whole bunch of Sparth paintings where this isn't the case, maybe where contrasts are so different or the whole color scheme is different, which is fine. These are just some general guidelines to really get you thinking about it. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you made it this far, Type in the comments down below, Sparth is my favorite anime. Although you didn't get to see the whole process, in the background was a bunch of vegetables being converted into robot mechs. I hope you enjoyed that for the time that you're able to see it. This has been Datsa, and remember that nothing awesome happens inside of your comfort zone.